Hey everyone, and welcome to this pretty special Tailia video. This is going to be in the same style of a look back at CW's RPG remake. So it's mostly going to be audio and little to no visuals, but I will have some things here and there to show. Today, well, as of the release of this video, the project of Tailia is going to be 2 years old. I started it in August 6, 2020 with a concept that I did, and yeah. And it is also the birthday for Tailia. As of today, she would be 21 years old. For this special occasion, there's a big announcement video that's going to release on the same day. But for now, we're going to be talking about something interesting that I never talked about publicly, but that I did tease at some point, but it got scrapped. We're going to be talking about Clockwork Tailia, the scrapped Tailia series that almost became an official thing. Now, the interesting thing about Clockwork Tailia is that I came up with the idea way back in November 2021. At that point, I started writing book 3 of the original quadrilogy. Book 2 had just released. It's precisely on November 13th that I made a logo for it, and I came up with the basic idea. So throughout this video, we're going to be talking about the original plans for Clockwork Tailia, as well as some plot points. I do not have a full story because there never was one to begin with, but I do have several ideas and concepts that would have happened. There's going to be some minor spoilers about the original quadrilogy, but I'm going to try my best to not spoil any of it. You can read it now on Amazon. You can get like all 4 books in Kindle for like $10. So yeah. So Clockwork Tailia would have been a sequel series to the original quadrilogy, set immediately after actually. And it would have had at least 2 books. The titles that I had written for it were Book 1, The Mechanical Halt, and Book 2, The Missing Years. This series' main theme would have been time. That was always spent. That's why it's called Clockwork Tailia. It would have been all about time. In the logo, you can see a heart-shaped logo that is supposed to represent the mechanical heart in Book 1's title. So basically, this was going to be a lot more experimental and a lot more science fiction-ish. Not to the point of time travel, but yeah, time would have been a major element of it, and that was basically the basic idea. Make a sequel series that revolves around a character with something related to time. Now, Book 4 in the final product has a pretty surprising ending, but it was changed several times before, and one of those endings that was planned back in like November or December was related to Clockwork Tailia. Now we're going to be talking about a character from the original quadrilogy who had very different plans when Clockwork Tailia was a thing. This character is called Gwen. So, Gwen Barry, as her full name, is a supportive character that appears in Tailia Book 3, Bad Mirror, and especially Tailia Book 4, Smart Crazy Girl. In the first book, she's admirative of Tailia herself, almost like a fangirl, whereas in Book 4, she is taking over more like a personal friend. Gwen is, in general, a pretty interesting supportive character in the original series, but she had way bigger plans for the future, aka Clockwork Tailia. At the end of Book 4, the original ending, well, one of the original endings anyway, it would have been revealed that Gwen herself also has powers similar to Tailia. And she would have revealed them to be kind of like this autistic, mechanical clockwork patterns. It's like creating out of thin air things that looked that had like a steampunk look to them. And she had something about time. The story of Clockwork Tailia would have followed her as basically the second protagonist. Audrey would have been a bit pushed to the side, which now that I think about it was not really a good idea. But yeah, Gwen was the center of attention, and she was going to be again a major character that had some problems with time. You know, stuff like time dilation and all that jazz. She would have been actually much older than she actually is. And she was going to have problems with her powers that Tai would have had to help her with. Book 2's title is called The Missing Years because Gwen had some sort of time dilation that made her skip a lot of her past. I know that at some point I had the idea of like a clock tower that was at the center of this whole mess, and that it was linked with Gwen. So yeah, I don't remember if this was going to be like the source of her powers or not, or if this was the source of her being basically lost in time, but yeah. So to recap, Gwen would have been a much more important character in the original quadrilogy that would lead to the Clockwork Tailia series, where she would have been the center of attention because she had time-themed powers that also looked a bit steampunk-ish and all, that were potentially linked to a clockwork that was in the middle of nowhere, and Tailia would have had to help her, and the two of them would have been the main protagonists of these two books, and possibly a third one. There are actually some remnants of Clockwork Tailia that are in Book 3 Bad Mirror. Gwen makes a few references to time here and there in like jokes, with like dates that are a bit wrong and all. And yeah, even in Book 4, I put like a little Easter egg. At some point, Tailia gets a shirt with the heart logo, and the excuse I made is that it's a design Gwen just created for fun. There's not really any relation, there's not really any secrets or whatever. It's just for funsies and all. Now we're going to dive into a bit more of a spoiler part. I need to explain something from the original quadrilogy that is technically a spoiler, so yeah. In the original quadrilogy, in books 3 and 4, we learn about something called the core. The core is essentially where Tailia got her powers from, and it is set as the center of the earth with radiations. Tai, in book 3, has a vision of the core, and she's actually in it. She finds documents that are dated from dates that just do not make sense at all. So that confuses her. And at the very end of book 3, when a certain character finds documents in a flashback, he realizes that the dates on them do not match with where they are in the present. There are dates that are from like a year later, a couple of months later. Time have really had a huge effect in the future of this series. And it was planned for like a month or two actually, before the series got cancelled. I did tease it on the Christmas video with like working title CW Taiwan, not Taiwan but Tai Book 1. This is basically all that's been made about it, I think, and I just made the logo. I got a placeholder cover that was made for book 1, and that's pretty much it. So why was it cancelled? First of all, the idea of doing a second series at the time, I was not a big fan of it. I even claimed multiple times after its cancellation, well, its secret cancellation, that there would not be either a sequel book or a sequel series to the original Tailia series. This statement aged a bit poorly, but the idea of doing a sequel series was not the highest of intention to me at the time, but most importantly, working on the series, it's good that I had some concepts here and there, but I did not have an actual story. I did not have an antagonist, I did not have a main plot, I did not have any major scenes that would make it stand out, It was just a very basic of ideas, and it was going nowhere. And I was also starting to not be a big fan of the whole thing, and I think I started to get scared actually, because working on any book or movies or video games that deals with time, as in time travel, time dilation, all that stuff, it gets really messy really fast. Especially if I do it in the world of Tailia that already has a lot of complex concepts. It was not going to work. It was going to be a bit of a mess actually, and I'm actually somewhat glad that I cancelled the book in the end, but the series itself, because I just had no plans. I was coming up with ideas here and there. They were going nowhere. It was a mess, and in the end, I think the character arc I gave Gwen in book 4 was much better than whatever was going to come out of Clockwork Tailia. if you read books 3 and 4, you'll definitely see some kind of character development with Gwen that's very interesting, because it's not your typical protagonist character development where like it's a fangirl that really wants to be like that person, but instead gets to be better or be herself in a good way, you know, something like that. No, the character development of Gwen is actually a lot more interesting and a lot more brutal, I think, in book 4. I'm glad with what I ended up doing with the Gwen character. I do regret having those time Easter eggs throughout books 3 and 4. They are a bit complicated. I do have some things planned to explain them, but yeah. So in the end, Clockwork Tailia was cancelled because it just had no proper plans. It was mainly concepts and ideas that were getting a bit messier and messier as time went on. I did have a couple of scenes planned in mind, but in the end that's not going to happen either because there's no point. With the direction the Tailia franchise is going now, things are going to be pretty different. I said that Clockwork Tailia was very experimental and science fiction, and technically that's still going to happen. Whatever is planned for Tailia that you're going to see on the Playground Reveal video, it will be more science fiction, more experimental, and actually have a bit more LGBT elements in it. And I swear, Audrey is one of the main characters. She's not going to be sidelined or whatever, no. This time, her and Tailia are going to be the center of attention. To end this video, which actually I'm surprised that it's not as long as I thought it would be. There's not really a lot to say actually about Clockwork Tailia. I just thought it was fascinating just to think about the fact that there was a cancelled series, you know. There were some scrap books here and there, some spin-offs, but a full-on series, that is a bit more interesting. It did not go anywhere again, and it's still the biggest loss of the Tailia series, but for the best. Books like From a Different Time, that's a bit more complicated. From a Different Time is technically still happening as Gifted Emily, but at the same time it might not. This one is a bit messier, and if it does end up being scrapped at some point, I will probably do another similar style video because of that. But I hope it was still fascinating to learn about the potential ideas, you know. One of the main inspirations for the very first Tailia book was actually some Christopher Nolan movies, such as Tenet. And those actually deals with time in some ways, so it was kind of like going full circle, but at the same time it was just not going to work out at all. So in the end, Clockwork Tailia got cancelled, and that's completely fine because of the Playground Reveal, which it's set as a premiere for August 6th, but when the studio is going to be out, it's basically going to be no. So yeah, Clockwork Tailia was ambitious, but ultimately messy and unplanned and unorganized, which ultimately led to its cancellation. I still find it pretty interesting about the idea of working with time, but in the end, that's probably not going to happen. Instead, what's going to happen is the Playground Reveal. This is going to be released right after this video, literally, and I'm very excited because this is going to be a very exciting writing year for the Tailia franchise. To end this video, I just want to confirm something. The excerpt that Mr. Matt read for his charity stream, so the 11 pages at the arcade, that is actually a scene from one of the books that's going to be revealed with the Playground Reveal. So yeah, it was not written for funsies, it was not written for fun or for just like a quick gift. No. It was an actual preview. I hope you enjoy watching this video or listening to it, and I'll see you next time for, I don't know, I really want to do more vlogs in the future like this because these are pretty fun videos where I love talking about this kind of stuff that fascinates me. So yeah, maybe we'll do other ones someday. Bye.